Welcome to the Urban Herald, where our team dives deep into the stories that reshape our understanding of the world. Today, we're embarking on a journey to tear down a long-held, almost romanticized notion about our Neolithic ancestors. The idea of a peaceful agricultural idyll.
Right.
What archaeologists are uncovering from over 6,000 years ago in ancient Europe paints a far more complex and, frankly, chilling picture. This isn't just about ancient history, it's about a profound reevaluation of human nature and our enduring capacity for organized violence.
Indeed. The latest research, grounded in findings from 2025, has fundamentally transformed our understanding of organized violence in prehistoric Europe. This isn't just about isolated skirmishes or accidental conflicts like maybe we once assumed.
Not at all.
We're talking about systematic warfare, meticulously orchestrated public executions, and even victory celebrations that display a strategic foresight that would, well, genuinely impress modern military tacticians. It's a level of sophistication and brutality that truly challenges our preconceived notions about these early societies.
Our mission today, here at the Urban Herald, is to guide you through these incredible discoveries, exploring the cutting-edge science that brought them to light. We'll delve into how ancient climate crises may have been a key driver behind these brutal societal innovations.
And we'll be focusing specifically on groundbreaking archaeological evidence from places like Bergheim and Achenheim in eastern France.
Exactly. Piecing together a vivid narrative of conflict, resource scarcity, and a surprising, albeit grim, form of adaptability. Prepare for a deep dive that will challenge everything you thought you knew about early human history, revealing profound connections between our distant past and the anxieties we, as a global society, grapple with today.
Let's jump in.
Okay, imagine, for a moment, stepping back 6,000 years. You're in what was once a bustling Neolithic farming community nestled in the heart of eastern France. Picture yourself walking through what would have been a vibrant settlement, perhaps on a cool morning. Now, let's shift that image to something far more macabre. Walking into what our team at the Urban Herald would call a truly disturbing scene. We're talking about a circular pit, not filled with the grains of a harvest as you might expect.
No.
But with human remains. Specifically, at the site known as Bergheim, a 2-meter-deep circular pit unveiled 7 human skeletons. 2 men, 1 woman, and 4 children, all strewn atop a collection of 7 severed human left arms.
7 severed left arms. The vivid, visceral image that immediately tells a story of profound and deliberate violence.
Absolutely chilling.
This was a discovery that truly sent ripples through the archaeological community when it was initially reported back in 2015 by anthropologist Fanny Chanal and her colleagues. The details are incredibly stark. The arms had been meticulously hacked off, likely by axes or other sharp
Implements, yeah.
and scattered hand bones found within the pit suggested they were deliberately cut into pieces, perhaps even disarticulated further after severance. What's crucial here is that these weren't just any burials. This was undeniable, irrefutable evidence of a specific violent event.
Right.
The precise nature of the mutilation, particularly the consistent targeting of only left limbs, hinted at something far more ritualized and intentional than simple post-mortem dismemberment. It moves beyond mere disposal of the dead.
The sheer brutality of this scene forces us to rethink everything. The intentionality, the consistency of the left arm mutilation. It speaks volumes. And remarkably, all of the main Bergheim skeletons, except for 1 man with distinct skull damage, were found with both their arms still attached.
Which is key.
So the question immediately surfaces. If these victims had their own arms, whose severed left arms were found separately in the pit. It's unclear if the missing arm from the skull-damaged man ended up with the others, but the targeted selection of left arms still stands out.
It really does.
The researchers have strongly speculated these could have been war trophies, grim symbols of victory or dominance over an enemy. This level of intentionality points towards a complex social and military structure that we're only now beginning to grasp.
And radiocarbon dating confirmed that these individuals lived around 6,000 years ago, placing them squarely within the Neolithic period, which in this region spans roughly 6,500 to 5,500 years ago.
Right, in that time frame.
And while circular pits were, in fact, a common feature across Central and Western European farming communities for disposing of the dead, study co-author Bruno Bulliston highlighted that Bergheim provided the first unambiguous evidence that people killed and mutilated in raids or battles were sometimes buried in them.
So it wasn't just a convenient disposal site.
Exactly. This led biological anthropologist Silvio Bello to suggest that such instances of violent deaths and ritualized mutilations in circular pits might have been far more common than previously expected, urging archaeologists to revisit and re-examine previously excavated sites with a more critical eye.
A potential paradigm shift, then.
Potentially, yes. It indicates we might need to reinterpret many other Neolithic sites that were once considered more benign.
Before these undeniably gruesome findings at Bergheim and other related sites, how did scholars typically explain these Neolithic circular pits? I mean, you mentioned they're quite common across Europe. What were the prevailing theories about their purpose?
Well, historically, explanations for these pits were quite varied, and often centered on more benign or ritualistic interpretations that didn't necessarily involve systematic warfare.
Like what?
Many researchers regarded them as repurposed storage silos, initially dug deep into the earth for grain, then used for the deceased, perhaps those deemed unworthy of a more formal burial once their primary function was exhausted.
Okay, that makes sense.
Other prominent theories suggested they were dug as graves for high-ranking individuals, where servants or relatives were sometimes killed to accompany them into the afterlife, a kind of retainer sacrifice.
To show status, perhaps.
Exactly, demonstrating status or ensuring the elite's comfort in the next world. Still others proposed they were sites for sacrificing slaves to display wealth or appease gods, showcasing, strong beliefs and a rigid social hierarchy.
But Bergheim changed things.
Dramatically. It expands and fundamentally challenges these interpretations, layering on this undeniable evidence of organized, brutal violence that doesn't necessarily align with those older notions of status or divine appeasement. It points much more directly towards warfare and its chilling aftermath. It forces us to add a new, much darker chapter to the history of these common archaeological features.
Wow.
The pit itself contained more complex layers than initially met the eye, suggesting a nuanced sequence of events. The excellent preservation of the joints of both the severed arms and the full skeletons indicated they were likely placed at or around the same time, possibly in one single catastrophic event.
Not dragged out over time.
Probably not. Alongside these human remains, archaeologists also discovered a piece of mussel shell jewelry, a flintstone arrowhead, a fragment of a pig's jaw, and 2 complete hair skeletons.
Odd mix.
A very eclectic mix. Human remains, personal adornment, hunting tools, animal parts. It adds to the mystery, strongly suggesting some form of ritualistic deposition, combining the grim spoils of war, maybe, or aspects of daily life with the bodies of the victims.
But there was more.
Yes. Then, on top of a distinct sediment layer, lay the skeleton of a woman who had clearly been put into the pit at a later date. Crucially, she showed no signs of violent death or limb loss.
Totally different context.
Completely different, indicating perhaps a more ordinary interment after the initial violent events had passed.
This layering within a single burial site truly suggests a complex chronology, doesn't it? Hinting at different purposes or stages of use for the pit itself. This wasn't a singular, simple event, a mere act of violence followed by immediate burial.
No, it seems more complicated.
It's a layered narrative of ancient lives and deaths, perhaps reflecting a shift in the pit's function over time, or multiple distinct events impacting the community. It forces us to move beyond simple, one-dimensional explanations. Makes you ask, what else happened here?
Precisely.
The raw evidence of these pits, the dismembered bodies, the questions about whose arms were whose. These findings raised so many questions about who these people truly were, where they came from, and why this brutal violence occurred. And for decades, archaeologists could only speculate.
Right, the why was always the big question.
But then a methodological revolution emerged, one that transformed ancient bones into detailed biographies. This is truly where the science elevates the story, because new groundbreaking research, published just this year, 2025, by Dr. Teresa Fernandez Crespo from the University of Valladolid and her team, has given us unprecedented precision, turning ancient bones into highly detailed individual life stories.
This breakthrough uses innovative multi-isotope biographical reconstruction. It's a technique that allows us to read an individual's life story directly from their remains.
How does that work exactly?
Well, by meticulously analyzing the stable isotopes of elements like carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, oxygen, and strontium found in bones and teeth, scientists can create what we call a chemical fingerprint of an individual's entire life.
Like an ancient passport.
Exactly like an ancient passport. It reveals not just geographic origins, but also detailed dietary patterns and mobility throughout their lives. These isotopes are absorbed from food and water, you see, and their specific ratios vary based on local geology, climate, and the types of plants and animals consumed.
So different places have different chemical signature.
Precisely. Strontium isotopes, for example, tell us about the bedrock an individual lived on. Oxygen isotopes reflect the local water sources. By measuring these ratios in different parts of the skeleton, especially teeth, which form during childhood and don't change much later, and bone, which remodels throughout life, researchers can reconstruct where someone grew up, what they ate, and if and when they moved between different areas. It's akin to a modern forensic investigation, but applied to people who died over 6,000 years ago, providing details that would otherwise be completely lost to time.
What a truly fascinating concept to think that an entire life story, from childhood diet to major geographic shifts, is literally written in the very bones of these ancient people. It profoundly transforms archaeology, doesn't it? From merely excavating objects into truly uncovering individual human narratives, giving voice to the
It
voiceless.
really does. And the results from this multi-isotope analysis were stark and remarkably definitive. The victims found with clear evidence of extreme violence. Those with unhealed skull fractures, the systematic amputation of their left upper limbs, deliberate bone breaking, signs of what we call overkill.
Overkill, meaning excessive force.
Yes, injuries far beyond what would be needed to cause death. These individuals displayed distinct isotopic signatures. These signatures were consistently different from the local population, indicating origins outside the immediate region of Bergheim.
So they weren't locals.
Definitely not. Specifically, the data strongly suggests that many of these individuals were likely from the Paris Basin region, a significant distance away. Their sulfur isotope values, which are particularly good indicators of local bedrock and environment transmitted through the food chain, showed significantly higher variance compared to local non-victims.
The locals.
In stark contrast, the local non-victims, those buried without signs of violence, had tightly grouped isotopic profiles. This indicates they exploited a much more restricted, local landscape, staying within a narrow geographical range for their entire lives.
So this provides powerful evidence, doesn't it? It means these violently killed victims weren't just internal community members who fell afoul of their neighbors. They were definitively outsiders, potentially captured during conflicts, brought into these communities, and then subjected to these horrific acts.
Exactly. It paints a chilling picture of intergroup warfare rather than solely intra-community violence, fundamentally changing our understanding of the scale and nature of these ancient conflicts.
How did the lead researcher interpret this?
Dr. Fernandez Crespo, drawing from these powerful findings, explains that these patterns point to a deeply embedded social practice, one that used violence not just as warfare, but as spectacle, memory, and assertion of dominance.
Spectacle and memory. Wow.
The systematic nature of the mutilation, particularly the consistent targeting of left arms and hands, strongly suggests these were not random acts of brutality. Instead, they were carefully orchestrated rituals designed to humiliate enemies and, crucially, to reinforce social cohesion within the victorious group. This othering of the enemy was deliberate, woven into their social fabric.
But the isotopes revealed even more nuance, right? About the limbs themselves?
They did. The isotopic analysis went even further, revealing a critical distinction within the victims themselves, which deepens our understanding. Some of the severed limbs found in the pits showed consistently low sulfur isotope values, matching those of the local non-victims.
Wait, matching the locals?
Yes, this suggests a grim but crucial interpretation. These were likely trophies taken from local warriors killed in battle. They were their own fallen, dismembered.
Their own people. Why?
It could have been a grim form of remembrance, perhaps, or a defiant ritual for their own dead, brought back to the settlement for communal mourning, or a defiant display of resilience, transforming loss into a symbol of ongoing resistance, maybe.
That's a profound revelation. So some severed arms belong to locals, their own people, taken as trophies from battle. But then what about the complete skeletons found in these pits? The ones often showing signs of overkill. What did their isotopes reveal?
Excellent question. And here's where the story takes an even more chilling turn. These complete skeletons, the ones exhibiting overkill, consistently had higher sulfur values, indicating origins from different regions entirely, possibly from southern Alsace or even further afield.
So two different groups of victims.
It seems so. This dual pattern supports a profoundly unsettling interpretation. Local combatants killed in battle were dismembered, their limbs brought back as trophies. Meanwhile, captured enemies, who were distinctly outsiders from other regions, were brought back alive to the settlement for public torture and execution.
A strategic, differentiated treatment.
Exactly. It's a level of strategic thinking that challenges our assumptions about prehistoric intelligence, differentiating between the treatment of their own, even in death, and the complete dehumanization of their foreign enemies.
As Professor Rick Schulting from Oxford University notes, this isn't just ancient brutality, it's sophisticated psychological warfare that would make modern propagandists envious.
It really was a deliberate act designed to send a powerful message, both internally to strengthen community bonds and externally to intimidate potential foes.
And the isotopes could even track life histories.
Yes, the multi-isotope approach went even further, enabling researchers to reconstruct surprisingly detailed individual life histories. Sequential analysis of dentine, which forms in childhood, and bulk enamel tract dietary mobility changes throughout individuals' lives.
What did that show for the victims?
The victims, particularly those identified as outsiders, consistently showed more frequent and pronounced isotopic shifts in their carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur profiles. These shifts are highly consistent with lives of displacement, conflict, and chronic insecurity.
Lives on the move, facing hardship.
Exactly what one might expect from populations caught up in territorial disputes and forced migrations due to external pressures. It reveals a pattern of hardship and instability etched directly into their very physiology.
So these weren't just random people caught in a raid. Their very bodies held the chemical record of turbulent mobile lives, constantly facing scarcity and conflict. It's a poignant and incredibly powerful testament to the human cost of these ancient societal struggles. Makes them feel incredibly real.
It truly does.
Now, have you ever considered what happens when climate change destabilizes an entire continent, altering the very fabric of life? The intense violence uncovered in Alsace didn't occur in isolation. Our team at the Urban Herald sees it as part of a much larger narrative, unfolding during a period of unprecedented upheaval across Western Europe.
Absolutely. This wasn't just localized bad luck. It was part of a much wider continental-scale crisis. Research by Detlef Gronenborn and others points to significant, widespread climate volatility across Europe between approximately 4400 and 3600 BCE.
And the timing lines up with the violence.
Perfectly. The most pronounced and impactful effects of this climate shift occurred precisely between 4300 and 4150 BCE, directly coinciding with the period of documented extreme violence and social disruption in Alsace.
What caused this volatility?
It was marked by what scientists call ice rafting detritus events, or IRD events. Essentially, massive discharges of icebergs from glaciers carrying rock debris into the North Atlantic. This influx of fresh water and cold disrupts the thermohaline circulation.
The ocean currents.
Right, the deep ocean conveyor belt that distributes heat around the globe. When that circulation slows or changes, you get these abrupt, dramatic shifts in regional weather patterns, severe cool spells, wet phases, increased weather anomalies across Europe.
Which would be devastating for early farmers.
Absolutely catastrophic. For societies just transitioning to full agricultural dependence, utterly dependent on predictable seasons, these environmental shifts were nothing short of devastating on multiple fronts.
How did it manifest?
It manifested as highly irregular precipitation patterns, significant temperature fluctuations, and longer-term climatic trends that fundamentally disrupted seasonal cycles, severely affecting crop yields year after year.
Leading to
This quickly translated into resource scarcity, as food stores dwindled, population pressure, as groups competed intensely for fewer viable lands, and consequently, territorial competition, as communities were forced to expand or fiercely defend their dwindling resources. It created a perfect storm for widespread social conflict.
It's truly remarkable how profoundly these climate patterns from over 6,000 years ago echo the anxieties we face today. Extreme weather, unpredictable seasons, resource stress. The parallels are undeniable.
They really are. Dr. Gronenborn explains this dynamic, stating, "We're seeing the same patterns that concern climate scientists today. Rapid environmental changes triggering populations, movements, and resource conflicts."
But he notes a difference.
The crucial difference he notes is that 6,000 years ago, communities developed incredibly sophisticated, they're undeniably brutal technologies for managing these acute pressures, simply because they had few other readily available options for survival. Their solutions were stark, unforgiving, but for them, effective in a rapidly changing world.
And this climate stress led to population movements.
Definitely. The Neolithic period saw dramatic boom-bust population cycles. High population densities often collided with environmental stress, creating conditions inherently ripe for conflict. The isotopic evidence, showing distinct origins for many victims, strongly supports the idea of forced movements.
Like the groups from the Paris Basin.
Exactly. We see patterns like the movement of groups from the Paris Basin, the Western Bishan culture, exerting immense pressure on the local Brubach-Oberbergen culture in Alsace. This wasn't peaceful cultural exchange. It demonstrably involved violent territorial conflicts that fundamentally altered regional demographics.
Desperate people fighting for survival.
Often, yes, displaced, desperate, and willing to fight. And the isotopic evidence from the victims themselves, revealing higher physiological stress and more variable diets across their lifetimes, is perfectly consistent with lives of displacement, hardship, and resource insecurity. Their bodies bore the chemical marks of this struggle.
A chilling reminder of how environmental pressures can ignite human tragedy.
And large-scale, brutal conflict.
What truly fascinates me about this period, and what our team at the Urban Herald constantly marvels at, is how rapidly these ancient communities shifted their very way of life. From scattered, relatively open farming villages to veritable fortress-like settlements.
The threat was constant.
Exactly. The threat of violence wasn't episodic. It was pervasive enough to fundamentally change the very architecture of their lives, transforming their daily existence into one of constant vigilance and collective defense.
The excavations at Achenheim, a sister site to Bergheim, and crucial for understanding this period, revealed not just the violence pits, but truly substantial fortifications.
What kind of fortification?
Picture a continuous V-shaped ditch, averaging an impressive 1.7 meters wide and equally deep, extending for over 155 linear meters, strategically interrupted by fortified entrances.
That's massive.
A huge enclosure, covering only 3 to 4 hectares. It represents an enormous community investment and an incredible feat of coordinated labor. Building that required not only immense physical effort, but also a highly organized society.
Indicating a shared, urgent need for protection.
Against very real and persistent threats. It's a testament to their collective resolve.
So you're suggesting this was the ancient equivalent of gated communities, but with much, much higher stakes. These weren't just for privacy, were they? They were essential for survival.
Absolutely essential. And the evidence doesn't stop there. The presence of over 350 storage pits found within the fortified area indicates a large, well-organized population capable of sustaining siege conditions for extended periods.
Preparing for prolonged conflict, not just raids.
Precisely. Indicating a deep-seated understanding of the threats they faced. And this wasn't isolated of Alsace. Across the entire Upper Rhine Valley during this period, archaeology paints a clear picture of a landscape of anxiety.
A landscape of anxiety.
Settlements consistently protected by palisades and ditches, weapons, traumatized bones found in various contexts, defensive structures everywhere. It all speaks to a chronic state of insecurity. This profoundly challenges the traditional, often romanticized image of peaceful Neolithic farming communities they were living on a knife edge.
What truly sets these Alsace discoveries apart from other known Neolithic massacre sites like Talheim or Schöneck-Kilienstetten isn't just the sheer scale of the violence, but its distinctly theatrical nature.
Yes, that's key point.
This wasn't merely warfare for survival in a purely utilitarian sense. This was ancient political theater that, quite frankly, would make Machiavelli proud, meticulously designed to manipulate emotions, assert power, and broadcast dominance.
You're absolutely right. The compelling evidence suggests a carefully choreographed and brutal sequence of events. Local warriors killed in battle had their limbs, specifically left arms, severed and brought back as trophies, perhaps a ritualized homage.
While the captured enemies faced a different fate.
Exactly. Captured enemies, the outsiders identified by isotopes, were transported alive back to the settlement for public torture and execution. The systematic nature of the mutilation, the consistent targeting of left upper limbs, points to established, almost codified, protocols for trophy taking and enemy processing.
Standardized practice.
It wasn't haphazard. It was ritualized, standardized, imbued with clear social and political meaning. The fact that the severed arms' hand bones were often missing or scattered suggests they might have been exposed, maybe even cured, smoked, or dried before final deposition, indicating a period of public display.
A grim monument to victory.
A very grim monument.
I find it incredibly chilling how methodical and public these rituals were. It wasn't just an act of violence, it was a performative spectacle, a macabre show put on for the entire community.
It speaks to a sophisticated understanding of how to use fear and display, not only to solidify power and identity within their own group, but also to send an unmistakable, terrifying message to any potential adversaries.
And the location of the pits reinforces this.
Exactly. The very positioning of these deposits within the settlement itself, rather than discreetly on its periphery, powerfully reinforces their role as community-wide spectacles. Professor Rick Schulting elaborates that this represents a deeply embedded social practice, one that used violence not just as warfare, but as spectacle, memory, and assertion of dominance.
So it served multiple functions.
Multiple crucial functions. Intimidating potential enemies, reinforcing the authority of local leaders, demonstrating their power to protect and avenge, and significantly, forging a powerful shared identity among the victors through a collective, visceral experience.
What really gets our team at the Urban Herald thinking is how these ancient communities seem to grasp something that modern societies are still grappling with. The profound power of shared experiences, even incredibly violent ones, to create and maintain group identity and cohesion.
They absolutely harness this dark knowledge, using it to bind their society together under immense pressure. These public executions and displays provided a cathartic release for communities under severe stress, channeling collective fear and anger into a unified, albeit brutal, expression.
Creating shared memories.
Exactly. Shared visceral acts created collective memories that profoundly bound the group together. As anthropologist Dr. Michael Harrison suggests, what we're seeing is the emergence of violence as a form of social technology.
Social technology, that's a disturbing thought.
Disturbing, yet incredibly fascinating. An insight into human adaptability and the complex, often dark ways societies form and maintain themselves under the most intense pressures.
But despite these victories, these displays, the local culture didn't ultimately survive, did they?
No. Despite their apparent victories in individual battles, evidenced by the trophy-taking and executions, the local Brumbach-Oberbergen culture in Alsace was ultimately overwhelmed. The period of intense violence, ending around 4150 BCE, directly coincides with the widespread appearance of Western Bishan culture materials throughout the region.
Suggesting the incomers took over.
It strongly suggests the incoming groups eventually succeeded in establishing control, effectively displacing or absorbing the local populations. So these intense victory celebrations, for all their brutality and purpose, were not a sustainable model for long-term resistance.
A desperate losing fight.
In a tragic sense, yes. A desperate and ultimately losing fight for cultural survival.
It's a truly poignant thought, isn't it? These intense, carefully staged victory celebrations may have been the last gasps of resistance rather than sustainable solutions. The celebration of a battle won doesn't always translate to winning the larger war of cultural survival.
Makes you wonder about the long-term costs of such short-term violent solutions. However, the legacy of these practices, organized violence, sophisticated territorial defense, ritualized trophy-taking, fortified settlements profoundly influenced European societies for millennia.
They didn't just disappear.
No, these social technologies, born out of crisis, became templates and precedents for future warfare and social control. They demonstrated how deeply ingrained these brutal innovations became in the human playbook for survival and dominance. The patterns set here shaped human conflict and societal structures for thousands of years across the continent.
The Alsace discoveries offer truly sobering insights into the intricate relationship between environmental stress, social organization, and violence. These lessons feel particularly relevant as contemporary societies grapple with unprecedented environmental challenges. Here at the Urban Herald, we're always looking for historical context for today's issues.
And this provides a stark, ancient mirror to our own times, indeed. The crucial lesson isn't that climate change inevitably leads to conflict. As conflict researcher Dr. Patricia Williams argues, the relationship is more nuanced.
So what is the takeaway?
The profound takeaway is that societies need to develop robust institutions and sophisticated nonviolent technologies for managing environmental stress before it escalates into widespread social violence. The Neolithic communities in Alsace developed highly sophisticated responses. They just happened to be violent ones. Perhaps because they lack the social and political infrastructure or the collective wisdom we strive for today.
They innovated for survival, but that innovation took a brutal form.
Under extreme pressure, yes, an uncompromising form.
This precise correlation between climate volatility and social violence, meticulously documented through cutting-edge science, serves as a powerful reminder that environmental stress can quickly lead to human conflict, forced migrations, and profound social upheaval.
But these discoveries also highlight the incredible human capacity for innovation and adaptation, even under the most extreme circumstances.
The profound question remains for us today, facing our own global challenges. What kind of innovations will we choose?
That's the crucial question.
And that wraps up our deep dive today here on the Urban Herald. The story emerging from those ancient circular pits in northeastern France truly rewrites a dark and complex chapter of prehistoric Europe, revealing a world far more intricate and violent than we once imagined.
It challenges our comfortable assumptions about progress and civilization.
Showcasing sophisticated societies grappling with climate instability, resource scarcity, and population pressure, much like we find ourselves doing today.
And the ability to trace individual life histories with such precision, to distinguish locals from outsiders, to reconstruct patterns of mobility and stress. It represents a methodological revolution in archaeology. It underscores how deeply intertwined environmental factors and social structures have always been, painting an incredibly vivid and personal picture.
This profound connection between our distant past and our present, made so clear by scientific innovation, is exactly what we strive to bring you every time on the Urban Herald. We invite you to ponder the sophisticated, if brutal, responses of these ancient communities.
And to consider what profound lessons they hold for our own capacity for both violence and, hopefully, for more compassionate and sustainable innovation in the face of our own challenges.
Thank you for joining our team today.